realizing with age that I'm not in shape. Hello again. When last we discussed the goblin and kobold dominated hermit kingdom of Texta, we'd reached what would be the current era for the introduction of player characters. There are, however, several personages that should be introduced, because at least some of them will be known to and interact with any native citizens in Texta. We also haven't discussed the large number of kobold cities, so let's start there. I've mentioned the Plum Warren, beneath Kelgamir, Batrak Kobolds, and the Regina, Livia Augusta. I've spoken about the Sal Warren, the Salters, and Tacita Antonia being their queen. Next is the Warren of Stanum, called Tin City by the goblins. The city can be entered through a cave along the cliff wall about halfway between Dapnomwick and Hinig Abbey. The kobolds here have slightly longer horns than their kin elsewhere, and their scales are a pale silvery grey with an almost waxy sheen. Their Regina is named Albina Cornelia, which translates as white horns. Stanum, or Tin, is a relatively small warren, housing roughly 1,000 kobolds all told. Albina is very calm, serene as a figure, easily approached and friendly to any who might want audience with her. She understands the ubiquity of the ore her people mine and the stability that creates for her city's economy. Almost everyone uses tin to some degree or another, but it's rarely thought of as a commodity like other metals generally are. This makes her feel secure in the safety and well-being of her people. Tin is traded to mix with copper for bronze production. It's mixed with lead to create solder for sealing containers or to adhere gemstones to fittings. Artificers even use it to connect pipes and wires together, but is never sought after with greed. It has no magical potential of its own, but it's always useful. It's not even very expensive, but enough of it is sold or traded that Stanum is a reasonably rich city, and always doing brisk business in the background. We come now to Granitum, or granite to the goblins. Granitum sits directly below Hirkusted, and can be entered directly opposite Yakurbi. It's not just monumental stone that's quarried here, but the collection of minerals and metal ores that seem to accompany granite where it's found, particularly copper, quartz, and gold. This is a larger city than most physically, though its population of around 3,000 is roughly average for Texta. Whereas the metal ores do fetch a higher price than the stone, the mainstay of the city is the granite itself. There's more call for it by volume than copper or gold, so that's where the work is focused. And through volume, that's where the most money is made. Strong stone roads and souterrain, walls, boundary fences, and houses are much more popular than jewelry. The Regina, Flavia Rufina, meaning gold and red. The people here are strong from hard labor, and their scales reflect the mottled color of pink granite with veins of and flecks of copper and gold. They're friendly enough to outsiders, but very defensive of their queen's name. as she has divided the spoils of their work fairly for many long years. She is also, due her age, the next in line to become Imperatrix, which means Granitum will become their people's capital city. "1,000 feet below the goblin city of Tonerbrook, the city of magic, lies the Warren of Vix. It's called Scarce City by those who live above it. Here are mined strange, rare, and obscure minerals, metals, and gems, magical components, alchemical reagents, and unknown elements for sages to experiment with. What they find is greatly sought after, even in small amounts. So they are a very rich city indeed. The people here have brightly colored scales in a spectrum of hues. The Regina Fausta Aurelia, meaning blessed crystals, holds far more pride in her city's library than in the spoils of its mines. She and her people do their own research to discover the uses and limits of what they dig out of the mountain. And they have recorded their findings for centuries. Accessing this knowledge is even more expensive than buying their ore and gems, but the prices are fair considering the efforts involved in gathering that knowledge. The first city of kobolds, the Vilam Warren, is simply known as the farm to the goblins above. It is exactly what it says on the tin. The original mine that was dug here in the cliff wall closest to Hirkusted was played out over 1,000 years ago. So the empty caverns instead became a place where subterranean crops and herds could be grown and managed. Large spiders are bred and their silk is collected and processed. Lichens and fungus are grown and harvested for food. Pools were carved in the bare stone where fish and frogs are farmed for the meat. It quite literally is just a very large farm. The kobolds here tend towards brown and green scales in subtle muted hues. They trade their wares with both the other Kobold Warrens and the goblins above in equal measure. The one who would be their Regina is the current Imperatrix, Flora Fabia, whose name means flowers and beans. Works as hard as any of her citizens in the gardens and the pens. This eldest kobold grandmother in all of Texta, at over 110 years, is as hale and healthy as any of her younger subjects. She rises early and starts work, continuing until far past what would be sunset in the rest of the world. This is much to the chagrin of her royal guards, who she insists work alongside her all day. Okay. The Kobold Imperatrix, by decree of the Council hundreds of years ago, is guarded by goblins, representing each of the settlements she doesn't have rule over. This means she currently has 9 personal guards, each from a different goblin city. The agreement was made to deter the involvement of the guards in any plot or conspiracy against her among the other Kobold Reginas. Likewise, the goblin Great Gwen is defended by 9 kobold personal guards from each of the 9 Kobold Warrens. The only guard who doesn't seem to mind the Imperatrix's habits is the one from Dapnomwick, where the farm work schedule is normal. Entering through the cliff face closest to the goblin industrial city of Hyakurbi lies Marmoris, the city of marble. It's a quarry city where limestone and marble are cut from the mountain for construction, for sculpting, for crushing to make gravel, and for burning to produce lime, for gardening, for plaster, and for cement. The kobolds here have scales ranging from medium gray to stark white. Being a quarry rather than a mine, the city is physically large, like its counterpart Granitum, but having a comparative small population, roughly the average of around 3,000. They trade and interact so heavily with Hyakurbi that it could almost be a single combined city, but they are separate. The Regina has a very different personality from the goblin Gwen, but they are able to get along well enough. Maxima Cecilia, which means great and blinding, enjoys the warmth and watching the bright flames of the kilns where her people's stone is turned into lime through alchemical process. It's her favorite activity. She's sometimes joined by the Gwen of Hyakurbi, and the two will sit in silence and share a drink while their two peoples work together on this first step toward building anything. On the north face of the mountain's exterior, there's a large opening. It sits directly below the goblin military camp called Suck Tower on the ice and snow of the topmost terrace of Texta. Within this cave is the warren of Femus. It's called Guano by the goblins. This place has become as much a military camp as it is a mine. The mottled brown and black scales of the kobolds here match the color of the bat droppings they dig out from the cave floor. Their uniformed soldiers are trained here to ride the giant flying foxes that hang from the ceiling. Often among the digging they find the bones of the large bats and other cave-dwelling beasts that had died long ago. So carving jewelry and tools from these bones has become a popular trade here. The Femus kobolds are a little more resilient to the cold outside after centuries of living so close to it and flying out in it on their patrols, though they still prefer the warmth of indoors. The Regina is Gratiana Fabricia, whose name means graceful artisan. She is herself an expert bone carver, but needs as must, she oversees both the mining and trade in bat guano, and the military goings-on in her city each day before returning to her workbench and her craft. The last and deepest of the Kobold Warrens is called Castellum. The goblins know it as base camp. Through measurements by sages, it was determined to be somewhere underneath the lake on the deepest terrace of the mountain surface. It's only accessible through the kobolds' own tunnels. It has no surface entrance. There are far more soldiers here than civilians. Those who spend long years and generations here have begun to resemble their larger draconic cousins, the ones revered by all their kin. They take on the horns and colors of the great dragons of the outside world, though they grow no larger themselves. Both metallic and chromatic, but they hold no enmity between the two. Their Regina, Marcella Aquila, which means warrior eagle, is the only Regina in Texta. She has the appearance of a blue dragon in miniature, complete with wings and horns and tail. But she is still, of course, a kobold. She considers herself a general more than a queen, due to her responsibilities. Castellum is a fortress in reverse. It guards against invasion from below. The city walls were built to surround the entrance to the deeper tunnels where soldiers and sages explore and study, and where the chaotic magics of a god's decaying corpse have brought about creatures and monstrosities that they dare not allow to escape. So those are all of the Kobold Warrens of Texta. Next time I'll tell you about all the Gwens of the Goblin Cities and their general goings-on. As always, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you want to see, and I'll see what I can do about it. Tell me if I made any mistakes so I can fix them. Give me ideas, and I'll talk to you next time.